The fork froze halfway to my mouth when Lily tapped her glass. That bright bell sound cut through the chatter and the clatter of serving spoons. The room smelled like butter, sage, and cinnamon. Outside, the ocean wind pushed at the windows like a guest no one invited. I set the fork down. My heartbeat smoothed into a slow, even line. Lily stood with her chin high, dress pressed like a magazine page. She beamed at our parents, then at the cousins who adored her, then at Jason, half proud, half ready to cry. Her voice floated over the table with that cheerful, polished shine she learned from years of being told she was a natural at everything. She announced the surprise. Our parents, Mark and Karen, were gifting her the house. The word gifting hung in the air like glitter. The room erupted, applause, whistles, a joke about property taxes shouted from the far end. Someone clapped my dad on the back like he'd done something noble. Someone else told Jason he'd landed the jackpot, a starter home near the coast, all charm and no strings. I didn't lift my glass. I didn't clap. I watched their faces. Karen's smile was bright but tight at the edges. My dad's grin had that tell I knew too well, teeth showing, eyes refusing to look straight ahead. Lily soaked in the attention like sunlight. She deserved good things. She did not deserve this. That phone call from Spring ran through me like a cold current. The stack of papers at their dining table. Just refinance forms, sweetheart, was the script. The missing figures, the vague lines, the way Dad snapped the folder shut when I asked to take them with me. Then my attorney's calm voice the next day, these weren't refinance papers. They were a liability transfer wrapped in a bow. A home equity line stretched thin, balances overdue, a quiet default clock already ticking. I said no. I thought it ended there. It didn't. I could feel my grandmother Maggie watching me. She didn't say a word. She never had to. Her eyes asked a simple question. Are you going to let this stand? Lily raised her glass higher for the toast. To new beginnings, she laughed, and to finally having a place big enough for all of you. She added a line about me being off the hook, which got another roar. Off the hook. Cute. I tasted copper under my tongue. Would you have raised your glass or your voice? I looked down at my plate. Turkey, cranberry, sweet potatoes. Ordinary food in a room posing as ordinary life. I slid my chair back an inch. The scrape was soft, but the table felt it. Conversations thinned. The applause faded. I could hear the ocean again. When I finally spoke, my voice surprised me with how calm it sounded. I didn't look at Lily. I looked at my father. Do you want to tell them? I asked, or should I? No one moved. My aunt's bracelet stopped jingling mid-gesture. Jason's smile fell in pieces. Karen's hand went to her throat like she'd swallowed the wrong word. Lily blinked, confused, then annoyed, as if I had stepped on her line. My dad's face drained, color sliding out like someone pulled the plug. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He reached for his water and realized he'd already emptied the glass. I waited. I could feel the binder in my bag like a steady weight, letters, statements, county records. Proof. I didn't want the spectacle, but I wasn't going to be quiet for their comfort. Not again. Rachel, my mother whispered, breathy and bright, let's not do this right now. She smiled at the room, a hostess patching wallpaper, and then at me. Her eyes begged me to sit back down and be the dependable daughter who keeps the peace. Peace built on a lie is just silence with better lighting. I kept my eyes on Dad. No anger. No raised voice. Just the space where truth needed to live. He stared at the table like answers might appear between the salt shaker and the gravy boat. He knew I knew. He knew the math, the missed payments, the second lien. He knew I hadn't come empty-handed. Across from me, Lily lowered her glass, confusion giving way to a tremble at the corner of her mouth. What is she talking about? She asked the room, not me. I didn't answer her yet. She wasn't my target. Not tonight. The wind pushed harder at the windows. The house creaked. Someone's phone buzzed, then died in a hurried palm. My grandmother's chair whispered against the floor as she leaned forward, just an inch, just enough to stand with me without standing. I breathed in. Salt air. Sage. Cinnamon. I let the silence stretch until it held. Dad? I asked again, gentle as a scalpel. Your call. His jaw worked. He looked up at me like a man caught halfway between two fires. The room waited, forks suspended, eyes wide, applause memory faded. The toasting was over. The real dinner had just begun. And I still hadn't opened my bag. My breath steadied, and the room blurred into one soft frame. If you looked at our family from the outside, you would see postcards. Matching flannel, snow dust on the porch railing, lights glowing warm behind the windows. My mother loved those prints. She mailed them with silver lettering and a handwritten note about blessings. People wrote back with hearts and compliments. They never asked what got cropped out. Inside those frames, we practiced a quiet religion: keep the peace, keep the picture. Arguments were rearranged, not solved. We learned which topics lived in the garage and which could sit in the living room. The rule was simple. Don't make work for the person holding the camera. I was the eldest and the dependable one. If something needed fixing, my name was the first draft of the plan. Rachel can figure it out was the family spell. It sounded like trust until I realized it meant invisibility with a smile. You can carry a lot when no one sees the weight. Lily arrived 5 years after me and floated through rooms like a bright song. Aunts called her a natural. Teachers said her laugh could start a parade. When she stumbled, hands flew in from every direction to steady her. The world wanted her to stay golden. I wanted that for her too. I also wanted a moment where someone looked at me and didn't just see a solution. Small stories built the bigger truth. When we were kids, Lily backed Dad's truck into the mailbox. The wood split like a rib. She cried hard, cheeks cherry red. My mother whispered, "Be a good example," and looked at me. I told Dad I moved the truck by mistake. He sighed, hugged me, and called it maturity. Lily got ice cream. I got the lesson. In 8th grade, I won a district science fair, nothing huge, just enough to feel the floor rise under my feet. We stopped for burgers on the way home, and I watched my ribbon curl in the heat from the fries. That night, Mom posted a photo from Lily's choir rehearsal with the caption, "Our star keeps shining." She forgot about the ribbon until I reminded her. She added it to a second post, 2 lines, no photo. Proud of both my girls. It read like a receipt. By high school, I could read the house in 4 sounds: the hum of the fridge when Dad walked away from any hard question, the clink of my mother's bracelets when she changed the subject, the hush when relatives decided a topic was too much, and the applause whenever Lily did something purely, beautifully Lily. None of that was evil. It was just gravity. But gravity shapes bone. College gave me distance. Seattle gave me air. I built a life where effort counted and no one called my calm cold. I found rhythm in screens and wire frames, in the small mercy of usability tests where behavior told the truth. At home, truth was a guest that got seated at the far end of the table, then thanked for coming and not invited next time. Every family has a phrase that sounds like love but means obedience. Ours was "don't be dramatic." It covered everything from late bills to hurt feelings. It covered me when I asked for clarity. It covered my mother when she asked for silence with a smile. It covered my father when he called dead a phase. There were perks to being the reliable one. I could leave. I could choose where to live, who to be. But even far away, the house followed me in little ways. My birthday card one year came with a form tucked inside, an emergency contact update that also added me to a bill, just in case. Early training for what came later, I guess. Would you have circled the line in red or swallowed it to keep the peace? Lily and I didn't hate each other. We just grew up learning different languages. She learned praise. I learned restraint. When she called, I stayed on the phone, even when I knew the call would end with plans I wasn't part of. When she posted, I liked the photos. I understood my assignment. And yet, there were these flashes. My grandmother Maggie would pull me into a quick hug during holidays and whisper, "You're stronger than they know." She would say it like a weather report. No drama. Then she'd step back and pass me the rolls. That sentence built a small room inside me where I could breathe. So by the time my parents tried to pass their debt off as better rate paperwork, I already knew the choreography. Smile. Sign. Keep the picture intact. I didn't dance. That was the first fracture they couldn't crop out. Back at the table tonight, the old patterns pressed against my skin like a dress I'd outgrown. Applause for Lily. The hostess smile. The don't make a scene eyes. I wasn't angry. I was done. There's a difference. I glanced at the doorway where the family photos hung in a grid, 12 squares of perfect lighting and practiced joy. In one, Lily and I are kids, cheeks pink with cold, heads tipped together. You can't tell from that image that I'd just taken the blame for the mailbox. You can't tell that my mother's bracelet was still. The thing about polished images is this: they're quiet until you touch them. Then you see the fingerprints. Then you notice what was trimmed to make everything fit. I didn't mind being cropped when it only cost me attention. But now the price was a house wrapped around a debt. Now the cropping had teeth. I lifted my eyes from the photos to my father across the table. He still hadn't found words. Lily's glass had dipped. The laughter was gone. The postcard edges were fraying in real time. I had lived my whole life playing my part. Tonight, someone had handed me the script again. And I was already holding a pen. I felt the shift the second I stepped inside. Cinnamon and bleach. Two bright lights. The ocean wind shoved the door as if it knew something I didn't. Karen moved fast between stove and sink with a smile that clicked on and off like a motion sensor. Mark kept busy with nothing, opening a drawer, closing it, straightening a stack of already straight mail. "Traffic good?" he asked the floor. "Fine," I said to the room. Distance is a muscle. Seattle had strengthened mine. Still, I came home for Maggie. My grandmother hugged me like the only person in the house who wasn't auditioning. She pressed her cheek to mine and whispered, "Breathe, love." Then she stepped away and adjusted a napkin so no one would think she'd said anything at all. The week leading up to Thanksgiving had been loud on Lily's phone: boomerangs of pumpkin pies, a ring-catching window light, captions about home base. She fussed with her dress now, though it didn't need fixing, and checked her reflection in the microwave door. Her smile bounced back at her, a perfect loop. I walked into the dining room and stopped. Something small, almost nothing, snagged me. An absence. There was always an extra chair near my usual spot, slid against the wall in case a cousin brought a date, or so I could shift closer to Maggie when she tired. It was gone. Not pushed aside, removed. The wall looked naked without the scuff marks it usually hid. Place cards waited in a cheery font Karen liked for holidays. Host, in block letters, sat where Dad used to hold court. Tonight, it was in front of Lily's plate. My name was at the far end near the kitchen door, where the drafts crept and the noise of plates covered conversation. A practical choice, Karen would say. Closer to help. I could almost hear the bracelets. Would you have pretended not to notice? I ran my fingers along the edge of the table. Fresh polish. The wood caught the light like a smile. Karen swept in with extra forks we didn't need and sang something about tradition. Mark drifted behind her, eyes skimming surfaces like he had appointments with all of them. Looks beautiful, I said, because it did. Beauty can be a mask and a mercy. Maggie eased into her chair and patted the one beside her, the one that used to be mine. A cousin claimed it before I reached it, loud and oblivious, pulling back for his girlfriend. He called across the room for more gravy, voice booming. Karen clapped, delighted. Another full table, another picture. Some truths arrive with a banner. Others whisper. The whispers started a week earlier when Karen called and sprinkled adjectives: cozy, generous, exciting. She used the word wrapped up about the house like it was a gift being tied, not a ledger being balanced. I felt a cold seam open along my ribs. In the kitchen, Mark's phone buzzed. He stepped into the laundry room and closed the door halfway, not enough to be rude, plenty to be private. The dryer thumped. His voice went low. "After the holiday," he said, "we sign." She's thrilled. Rachel is not involved. He paused. Yes. Clean. The word hung there like fog. Clean. He didn't see me in the doorway's reflection. The stainless steel showed movement without faces. I went back to the hall of photos. 12 perfect squares. One of Lily in cap and gown, lip gloss catching sun. One of me at a window, soft focus, my hand on a book I hadn't read in years. A postcard life. I could feel the space where arguments had been framed out. I could see where a shadow had been cropped to keep the color bright. Maggie's reflection joined mine in the glass. She didn't look at the pictures. She looked at me. "You don't have to carry it," she said, barely moving her mouth. "Not this time." Then she pivoted and asked loudly who wanted rolls. Gravity disguised as small talk. I passed through the living room where Lily's overnight bag sat open. A ribboned envelope peeked from a side pocket, calligraphy on the front with her future last name. Read. A detail meant to charm Instagram. It hit me like static. I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at the script being handed to her with a smile. Jason arrived with a store pie and a grin that made the older aunt simper. He wrapped Lily up and asked her quietly if today was the day. She nodded like a kid keeping a secret, then pretended to shiver for the camera while he filmed a quick story. Just hands, just laughter, just enough fuel for friends who were watching. No one films that. No one filters foreclosure notices. Conversations dipped each time I entered a circle, then rose again 2 seconds later with fresh small talk. My mother offered me a job, garnish, then napkins, then water, then the extra salt someone might need. Helpful tasks are a gentle way to move a person out of the frame. I did them well. Old habits. On the counter, under a decorative cutting board, a manila folder stuck out a 1/4 inch. I didn't touch it. I didn't have to. I knew the texture already, glossy on the inside, thin enough to bend guilt into paperwork. Karen slid it deeper when she caught me looking and smiled with every tooth she had. The house has a language. Tonight it spoke it fluently. The fridge hummed when questions approached. The bracelets clinked when a topic needed moving. Doors clicked softly to turn people into silhouettes. And under it all, the ocean pressed its palm against the glass. I carried a pitcher to the table and placed it down where my name card sat, near the draft. The cold air touched my ankles. Maggie cleared her throat without looking at me. A tiny sound. A lighthouse blink. What do you do when a family rehearses a gift that isn't a gift? When love is used like wrapping paper around a bill with your name spelled wrong on purpose? I thought about spring. About the folder my father had snapped shut. About Dana's calm voice explaining line by line how the better rate hit a fuse. I had said no then. I would say no now. But there was something else I couldn't let happen. They were aiming the fuse at Lily and calling it a candle. Mark reappeared with his grin reattached. Karen lifted her chin and scanned the table like a director. Lily stood near the head seat, fingertips on the host card as if checking it for gravity. Jason whispered something that made her laugh, and for a second I wanted that laugh to be true, unmarked by fine print and ceilings you don't see until you hit them. My bag felt heavier than it should have. Not from clothes. From preparation. I hadn't decided how the scene would play yet. I only knew I wouldn't let silence do the speaking for me. Karen rang a little brass bell she loved to use for grace. Everyone shuffled to their places. The draft found my ankles again. The extra chair's absence printed itself across the room like a quiet verdict. Decisions had already been made, and my role had already been written. I took my seat, counted my breath, and listened to the bell's last bright note fade. And in that small quiet, I heard something else, Jason telling Lily, soft but hopeful, "Can't wait to paint our room." Clean, he thought. Free, she believed. Forgiven, my parents needed. I looked at Maggie. She nodded once, as if we'd agreed on a time and a place. The turkey arrived in a wave of applause. Cameras lifted. The picture built itself. I let it build. For one more minute. The rain stuck to Oregon like a second shirt that day. Karen called with a voice full of confetti. "Important," she said, refusing details. I drove down anyway, windshield wipers keeping time with a low, uneasy drum in my chest. The house smelled like lemon oil and worry. Mark had set the dining table like a stage, runner straight, pens lined up, papers squared into a neat, inviting stack. He did the script. Better rate. Simple signatures. We'd be helping them lock it in before terms changed. Karen hovered, bright as a sales window, pouring coffee I didn't drink. The pages felt slick. Numbers blurred under white boxes. Sections that should have been plain had language that curled on itself. If you've lived with secrets, you learn the weight of paper. I asked for time. I asked to take the folder to Seattle. Mark's jaw tightened like a bolt. He snapped it shut, same move he used on hard conversations. No need to complicate things. He said we were family. He said trust. He said hurry. All those words tried to crowd the room and sit in my chair. Silence can be a tool. I let it sit. Then I slid the folder toward me and kept my hand on it. Karen smiled wider, as if a bigger smile could turn a no into a nod. Mark looked at the window. Outside, the yard squinted under gray light. Would you have signed to keep the peace? I drove back with the file on the passenger seat like a quiet passenger. Seattle rose out of mist and traffic. I laid the papers on my kitchen counter and felt my pulse settle. Then I called Dana Cho, my real estate attorney, who sounds like good breaks, calm, firm, built to keep you alive. She took one day. When she called, she didn't waste breath. This is not a refinance, Dana said. Her voice didn't climb. The facts did. Line by line, she walked me through it. A home equity line pulled to the limit. Missed payments dressed up as temporary hardship. A transfer structure that slid liability to me while leaving them whole on paper. If I signed, I would inherit the debt and the fuse. They're trying to hang the backpack on your shoulders, she said. And it's full of bricks. I put her on speaker and flipped pages as she talked. The legal words softened into human ones. Sign here and you become the cushion between the bank and their choices. Sign here and you donate your future to their past. Sign here and you will spend years paying for a house you don't live in. The number wasn't just big. It was heavy. 6 figures that would eat my savings and gnaw through the rest. Dana told me how defaults tick. She told me what lien letters look like when they stop being polite. She told me I was not required to carry anyone's secrecy. I stood very still. The city hummed through the window screens. My kettle clicked off without a whistle. Peace felt like a flat line, not a gift. I called my parents back that night. I kept my voice even. I said no. No to the papers. No to the rush. No to being the fix they didn't earn. Mark tried the shrug that used to work when I was 16. Karen tried soft words about family. I stayed with the word that held. After that, the calls thinned. A text here. A photo there. Lily posting porch sunsets and big year energy. I wanted to believe the folder had died in a drawer. I wanted the fire to go out for lack of oxygen. 3 months later, Mark phoned again with a story about medical bills. The amount he wanted didn't match what clinics charge. When I offered to pay the provider directly, his story frayed. He hung up quickly. The next morning, I checked the county site. A second lien blinked at me from the screen like a warning light I couldn't unsee. Interest rising. Letters sent. A clock with no pause button. I printed everything. I slid it into a fresh binder. I told myself this was protection, not a plan. You can be ready without drawing the sword. You can hold a line without raising your voice. Back then, I thought the danger was pointed only at me. I thought saying no was the end of it. I didn't know the plan would shift shape. I didn't know they would wrap the same fuse in a bow and aim it at Lily. My phone buzzed while rain stitched lines down my window. Mark's name lit the screen like a small alarm. He sounded rushed, breathy. He said Karen's clinic bill had ballooned and they needed a bridge. The number he asked for sat heavy in my ear, too neat, too round. I offered to pay the clinic directly. Paper to provider, no cash deters. The silence that followed said more than his words ever could. He pivoted. He said they'd already paid some of it. He said timing was messy. He said my help would steady the ship. The phrases didn't touch ground. I kept my voice level and asked for the invoice. He said he'd text it. The text never came. The next day, his call went to voicemail. I made tea with hands that looked calm. Then I opened my laptop. County records don't care about family stories. They tell you what's filed, not what's felt. The site creaked like an old hinge. I searched the parcel number from memory and watched a new entry appear. A second lien, months old. Interest rising like floodwater. A note about referral for foreclosure if arrears weren't cured by a date that didn't blink. My stomach went quiet. I printed the page. I printed the timeline. I printed the words, Notice of Default Proceedings. Paper cooled the heat behind my eyes. Facts are cold. They also keep you from burning down your own sanity. At first, I did the old math. Eldest. Stable job. No kids. The silent family plan where my independence doubled as their insurance. Maybe I was always meant to be the cushion. Maybe I'd misread spring. Maybe no one else could shoulder this without sinking. Then Lily posted a photo on the porch with our parents. Fresh mums, doormat straight, captions about leveling up and home base vibes. Another shot of color swatches fanned across the old living room floor where we built forts as kids. Lilac, sand, seafoam. Hashtags about adulting and chapters. Her comments glowed. Friends asked when housewarming would be. Jason replied with a muscle emoji and a promise to paint. Air thinned. The plan wasn't dead. It had changed clothes. My no had redirected the river toward my sister with a bow on it. Karen called 2 nights later with a voice like champagne. She bubbled about how thrilled Lily was. She said once the paperwork is wrapped up on the house, we could finally host proper holidays. Wrapped up. Proper. I asked which paperwork. Bracelets clinked. She danced around simple transfers and timing. She used the word gift twice in 30 seconds and never said lien or arrears once. I put the phone on speaker and opened the county page again. The date sat there, blunt and patient. Interest doesn't blink. Neither do deadlines. I asked Karen if Lily knew every detail. Karen laughed small and said, "Don't be dramatic." There it was, our family's magic spell. It used to shut me up. Tonight it felt like a door I could finally see through. Would you still call it love if it came with a ledger? When the call ended, I scrolled Lily's feed in a slow, careful ache. She wasn't a villain. She was a target dressed as a princess. The comments turned her into a story where houses are free and futures are smooth. I wanted to protect that girl. I also wanted the truth to stop apologizing for existing. I texted Dana a thank you for spring and told her I might need language that laypeople could understand at a dinner table. She replied with a clear, human summary and a reminder. A title can hold both a deed and a debt. You can inherit both. I read it twice, then again, until the sentences sat steady in my throat. Back at my counter, the printer crawled. Pages slid out warm and flat. Late notices. Lien summaries. A bank letter with hard edges. I stacked them by type and date, then stapled each set like I was stitching shut a wound. I looked around my apartment, plants soft in the lamplight, the city a quiet pulse beyond the glass. Seattle had taught me how to build things clean. My parents had taught me how to survive in messes and make them look like centerpieces. Both skills would matter. Thanksgiving was days away. The house in Oregon was already being photographed in Lily's mouth as a promise. Jason was measuring paint. The relatives were practicing their applause. The ocean would be waiting, pressing its steady hand against the windows like always. I opened a cabinet and pulled down a fresh, empty binder. The cover clicked when I flexed it, a crisp little sound like a switch. If they were going to stage a gift, I would bring the bill to the stage. I laid the papers out like a map I didn't want to follow. Late notices on the left. Lien summaries in the middle. Bank letters on the right like teeth. I added clear tabs, dates, amounts, risk, what happens if. I wasn't planning a scene. I was planning a translation. People hear money better when the words are simple and the font is big. I called Dana and asked for 10 plain sentences anyone at a dinner table could understand. She gave me 11. I rewrote them in marker, 1 per sheet, like flashcards for a truth test. If you accept title, you accept the debt. A gift can carry a bill. Default clocks don't pause for feelings. I stacked them until the deck felt steady in my hands. Would you prepare for a holiday like you're prepping for court? The binder clicked when I closed it. That sound felt like permission. I slid it into my bag with a sweater and a charger, then stood in my quiet apartment for 1 more minute. Plants breathing. City soft beyond the glass. The life I built by saying yes to work and no to drama hummed like good wiring in a house that won't burn. The road south was gray and long. The ocean appeared in pieces, then in full, flattened under the sky. At a gas station outside Aberdeen, I bought coffee I didn't finish and checked my phone. Karen had sent photos of the table, glasses shining, napkins folded like sails, Lily's name card in a looping script dead center. "She's so excited to host," the text read. "Feels right." The word right sat wrong in my stomach. 2 exits later, Lily posted a boomerang of color swatches fanning across our old living room floor. Her caption joked about arguments over seafoam versus sand. Jason commented that he'd paint whatever she wanted. The heart count climbed. I drove through drizzle and silence. My hands stayed steady on the wheel, but my jaw ached. By the time I reached town, the sky had pulled the light low and thin. Karen opened the door with a perfume hug and a sentence about how happy Lily would be to see me. I counted 3 exclamation points in her voice. Guests get that many. Daughters don't. Inside, the house had its Thanksgiving shine. The runner was perfectly straight. The good plates waited like soldiers. My name card was near the kitchen door where the draft lives. Lily's card said host in block letters where Dad used to sit. I told myself not to read meaning into fonts. Fonts still speak. Maggie caught my eye and gave me half a smile, then a tinier nod that said, "I see the bag. I see you." I walked to her, kissed her cheek, and felt her hand press my wrist as if to take my pulse. It slowed. In the kitchen, something familiar glowed under a cutting board, a manila edge. Karen noticed me noticing and slid it deeper with 2 fingers and a wider smile. The bracelets clinked. "Gravy?" she asked, as if gravy were the point of the evening. Mark's phone buzzed. He stepped into the laundry room and left the door almost closed. His voice dropped into that borrowed confidence men use when they're selling certainty. "After dinner," he said, "we'll talk timing." "It's clean. Clean." The word kept showing up like a stain you can't scrub darker. I washed my hands and counted to 8 like I do before presentations. The mirror over the sink threw back a calm woman with tired eyes and a good blazer. I reminded myself of the rules I'd written on the drive. No yelling. No names thrown. Ask him to tell it first. If he won't, I will. Protect Lily. Don't absorb anything that isn't mine. Would you warn her privately or let the truth land where everyone can see it? I found Lily in the hall of photos, fixing an earring. She looked happy in a way that hurt, simple, soft, unprepared. She hugged me and told me she had big news and that I would love it eventually. I almost told her then. My mouth opened. Maggie's reflection flashed in the frame, small, steady, waiting. I closed my mouth. Not here. Not as a whisper someone could deny later. Back in the dining room, I slid my bag onto the floor beside my chair, the binder upright like a spine. I placed my phone face down. I placed my hands palm to palm until the shake left my fingers. Air moved around my ankles. The missing extra chair printed its absence across the wall again. Karen floated in with the turkey, a little bell in her hand for grace. Conversations rose, sank, then braided themselves into the comfortable hum of families who think they know each other. Jason topped off glasses and whispered something that made Lily laugh into her napkin. For a second, I wished none of this were true. Then I felt the binder against my calf. I wasn't preparing to shame anyone. I was preparing to be believed. There's a difference. The bell rang, bright and neat. We bowed our heads and thanked the usual things. When people lifted their chins, Lily's eyes were already shining for attention. Forks touched plates. The air thickened like it does before a storm that refuses to announce itself. I slid my chair in, sat taller, and placed one hand on the bag without looking down. I would give my father the first chance to speak. If he didn't, the pages would. The room waited for my father to invent a softer version of the truth. He didn't. His mouth opened, then closed, then found his napkin like it might contain a script. The ocean pressed its slow palm against the window. Silverware stilled. Heat rolled off the turkey in a fog that smelled like everything we wished this night could be. I reached down, lifted my bag, and set the binder beside the gravy boat. The rings clicked when I opened them, one clean, bright sound. Plates shivered. Karen whispered my name like a warning wrapped in love. I didn't look at her. I slid the first sheet into the center of the table where everyone could see the black letters that never learned how to lie. County record, I said, calm. Second lien. Months old. Eyes leaned in before bodies did. Ink doesn't shout. It wins by standing still. I turned the page. A bank letter. Past due. I turned again. A number at the bottom right that had weight. About 120,000, I said, translating the commas into air. Tied to this house. Lily blinked at the paper as if the numbers might rearrange themselves into confetti. Her smile tried to hold. It couldn't. Jason's hand, still on the back of her chair, slipped an inch. Mark cleared his throat and tried for casual. You're making it sound worse than it is. He reached toward the binder and stopped when he saw Maggie's hand settle on the table like a quiet guardrail. Karen found her bracelets. We're handling it, she said, voice bright. It's temporary, sweetheart. Short-term cash flow. Don't be dramatic. I finished for her gently. This isn't drama. It's math. Would you still call this a gift if it came with a bill? I slid forward the 11 plain sheets I'd written with Dana's help. 1 sentence per page, marker thick, language human. If you accept title, you accept the debt. Then a gift can carry a balance. Then, default clocks don't pause for feelings. Each line landed like a soft hammer. Lily looked up at me, eyes glassy, mascara on the edge of running. What is this? She sounded 26 and 5 at the same time. Is this a joke? I wish it were, I said. I believe you didn't know. But the bank does. Across the table, an uncle tried to restart the party with a laugh that died halfway out. Aunt Carla leaned forward, lips pressed thin, eyes sharp as scissors. The cousins stopped sneaking more rolls. Even the kids in the living room turned down the volume on their game without being asked, as if the house itself told them to listen. Jason reached for the top page like a man checking a map in a storm. He read. He didn't blink much. His jaw found a new angle. This is real, he asked me, not accusing, just trying to put a floor under his feet. These are public records, I said. And bank letters. They don't post fiction. Karen's smile stiffened into something brittle. Rachel, you're humiliating us. No, I said, still even. I'm informing Lily. I turned the summary toward my sister. A simple line. Sign the transfer, inherit the arrears. I watched comprehension cross her face in stages, confusion, denial, and then the small, physical flinch of understanding. Her hand left the stem of her glass. The bell of it touched the table and rang once, too soft for anyone but me to hear. Mark tried another story. This is a timing issue. We planned to cover it. We were going to tell you both after. After she signed? Aunt Carla's voice cut clean through the linen. She didn't raise it. She didn't have to. Karen reached for Lily's arm. Lily pulled away without looking, eyes still glued to the number that would live on every bill until it was paid. You told me it was clean, she whispered, not to me, to the space between her and our parents where childhood used to sit like a couch. Jason's fingers tightened on the page. He turned to Mark, then to Karen, then back to the line that explained the trap in words a child could understand. He set the paper down carefully, as if the ink might bite. Silence widened. The fridge hummed on cue. Somewhere, the ocean rearranged itself and kept going. I could smell sage again, sweeter now that the room wasn't pretending. Would you have kept quiet to save their faces, or opened your mouth to save her future? Rachel, my father said finally, trying to summon authority he'd already spent, you don't understand how these things work. I do, I said. I had a lawyer explain it line by line. In spring. I let the word spring land, then added, when you asked me to sign. A ripple moved through the table. Heads turned. The cousins' eyes doubled. Karen's fork slid off her plate and into the stuffing with a small, damp sound. Lily's chin lifted half an inch toward me, as if air lived in that direction again. Jason's hand left Lily's chair. He straightened. His napkin fell like a flag coming down. You asked Rachel to take this? His voice didn't crack. It cooled. Mark went for charm and missed. We explored options. Options, Jason repeated, tasting the word and finding it spoiled. He looked at Lily, then at me, then at the neat stack of proof that did not care about anyone's tone. I watched Lily's eyes, wide, wet, furious, then purely scared. She swallowed and spoke like someone trying to pull a splinter with her bare fingers. If I sign, is it mine? All of it. Yes, I said. All of it. Karen's breath hitched. We would help. With what? Aunt Carla asked, soft and deadly. Applause? A cousin coughed. Another reached for water like it was medicine. The room had shifted from celebration to trial without changing decorations. That's how truth works. It doesn't move the furniture, it flips the lights. I closed the binder halfway. The sound felt like a door almost shut. Lily, I said, I won't let you walk blind into this. If you want to keep believing them, I can't stop you. But I'll put the facts on the table every time. Her mouth trembled. Why didn't you tell me sooner? It wasn't accusation. It was grief. I tried, I said, and my voice went softer than I meant. But I needed an audience that would remember. Jason pushed his chair back. The scrape cut the room in two. He stood. He didn't look at the turkey or the photos or the ring on Lily's hand. He looked at my parents like a man measuring a bridge that just failed under his weight. Is any of this paid off? He asked, or were you planning to make us the plan? No one answered. He put his napkin on his plate like a white square of surrender to reality. And then he took a breath that changed the air. Jason pushed in his chair with a slow, final scrape. The sound cut through the room like a clean slice. He set his napkin down, squared the edges, and looked at my parents the way a mechanic looks at a car with a cracked frame. Then he turned to Lily, softened for a heartbeat, and the softness broke. I can't build on this, he said. Not loud. Just true. He stepped back from the table, then from Lily, then from the life he had pictured in their living room. He walked past the turkey, past the pies, past the photos. The front door opened on a gust of cold and shut behind him like a period. The ring didn't clatter. He took it with him. The absence rang anyway. Lily folded. Not fainting, just a collapse of the idea she'd been holding up. Mascara smudged under her eyes in 2 quick strokes. She whispered over and over that she didn't know. It wasn't a performance. It was a child trying to unremember a promise. I touched the back of her chair. I didn't try to hug her in front of that many eyes. I said the only thing I could say, I believe you. Her hand found the tablecloth and gripped it like a ledge. Mark slammed his palm down. The glasses jumped, the gravy shivered. You ruined everything, he said to me, like I'd broken a toy. Karen reached for me with glossy eyes and a trembling smile. Please, she whispered, stop this. You're tearing us apart. Aunt Carla leaned in before I could answer, voice low and precise. How long have you been behind, Mark? She didn't blink. And who told you it was okay to wrap dead as a gift for your daughters? Relatives shifted. Chairs inched away from my parents like boats loosening from a bad dock. The teasing uncles went quiet. The cousins watched as if the movie had changed genres. You could feel the room voting with distance. Karen tried another smile. The bracelets clinked and clinked, a nervous wind chime. This is being blown out of proportion, she said, the script wobbling. It was temporary. We were about to let Lily sign? Carla asked, soft as a cut. Mark's jaw worked. He tried the old glare, the one that used to shrink a room. It met the binder and died. Maggie stood up without hurry. She rested both hands on the table to steady her knees, then lifted her eyes to her son. Age softened nothing. I raised you, she said, voice steady enough to carry. I did not raise you to make lifeboats out of your girls. The sentence settled like a verdict. Mark looked at his mother and found no rescue there. Karen's tears went quiet. Lily's breath hitched twice, then evened out. What do you call love when it asks your future to pay for the past? Maggie turned her gaze to me, then to Lily, and nodded once as if she were blessing a boundary. Enough, she said. We're done pretending. She eased back into her chair, hands still on the edge like anchors. A cousin cleared his throat and asked, careful, whether the number 120,000 was exact. I slid the summary toward him. He didn't touch it. He just looked, then leaned back as if heat came off the ink. Mark tried one last route, anger as camouflage. Family doesn't air this in public. His voice shook on public. He wasn't protecting dignity. He was protecting the dark. Family doesn't lay traps, Carla answered. She didn't look at me when she said it. She looked at him. Karen's eyes swung to Lily. We were going to help, she said, thin. Lily stared at her plate, at the neat crescent of untouched cranberry sauce, and said nothing. That silence held more truth than any speech. Around us, the house changed shape without moving a chair. The applause from earlier lived only in memory. Even the kids in the other room had gone still on the couch, controllers quiet in their palms. Maggie patted the table once, a gavel soft as a hand. "We will fix what we can," she said. "But not like this. Not on their backs." I closed the binder and felt the click travel up my arm. The ocean pressed again at the glass, steady, patient, unbothered by any human story. Karen dabbed at her eyes. Mark stared at the wall. Lily's shoulders shook and then settled. That's when the gravel outside crunched. Tires. A door. Footsteps on the porch. The kind that don't wander. The kind that know where they're going. 3 firm knocks cut the house in half. The chatter snapped, the ocean hush stepped closer, and every fork hovered midair. Mark stood like a man remembering he'd left something on a burner. He opened the door to a woman in a plain blazer with rain on her shoulders and an ID clipped to her belt. Calm voice. Clear eyes. "Not here for pie." She introduced herself as Angela Ruiz, Compliance Officer, State Housing Commission. Her badge flashed once, then rested. She explained, measured, polite, that their office had received a report about discrepancies in mortgage and equity records tied to this property. She needed to ask a few questions. She used words that carry their own chair to sit in: review, verification, timeline. How do you breathe when the truth arrives wearing a badge? Angela stepped inside. The room moved back an inch without meaning to. Relatives created space the way people step away from fresh paint. My grandmother Maggie stood, slow but steady, and rested a hand on Lily's shoulder. I stayed seated, spine tall, hands quiet. I wasn't the focus now. The light had found its mark. Angela opened a thin folder and read dates like mile markers. Original mortgage. Home equity line. Drawdowns that didn't match stated income. A second lien. Missed payments. Notices sent. Her tone didn't rise, didn't scold. It simply placed each fact on the table beside the gravy. Mark tried a neighborly laugh that rolled once and died. He said there'd been a mix-up in mail. He said temporary hardship. He reached for charm and came up with noise. Karen smiled too bright and offered coffee. Bracelets clinked. The bell sound had lost its magic. Angela recorded their answers with a pen that didn't hurry. She asked if they were attempting a title transfer during active default proceedings. Karen said gift. Mark said timing. Angela said, please answer the question. Not unkind. Just firm enough to hold the walls up. Jason's empty chair stared like an accusation. Lily didn't look at it. She stared at the number on my summary, the one that wouldn't stop being true. Mascara made small half-moons under her eyes. Maggie's hand on her shoulder never left, a quiet anchor in a room that kept losing its floorboards. Aunt Carla cleared her throat, then thought better. She folded her arms like a verdict and let the officer do the speaking. A cousin pulled his girlfriend's chair a little farther from Mark, like moving away could keep the mess from jumping hosts. Angela asked to see any documents related to the planned transfer. Karen hesitated. Mark said they weren't handy. The laundry room door was still half-closed. Angela looked at the gap, then back at them and waited. Waiting can be louder than shouting. Karen disappeared and returned with a manila folder that had been hiding under a cutting board 10 minutes earlier. The paper sighed when it met the table. Angela scanned the pages. Her pen made small, even notes. You understand, she said, that transferring title to an immediate family member, while significant arrears exist, will not extinguish those arrears. She glanced up. It may also trigger additional review under our equity stripping guidelines. She softened the terms with a sentence even Lily could hold. If you pass the house, you pass the debt. Mark said they were just trying to keep it in the family. Angela nodded like you nod at a child who is asked to put a Band-Aid on a broken pipe. Intent doesn't change obligation, she said. Numbers do. Would you have stepped in to cushion them, or let the facts do the work? I kept my binder closed. I didn't add commentary. I had said what mattered. Tonight, the consequence wore state credentials. The relief that rose in me tasted complicated salt and steel. Not joy. Just air I didn't have to make alone. Angela asked permission to copy several pages. Mark tried to say the printer was broken. Aunt Carla stood, fetched my stack without a word, and slid the duplicates I'd prepared toward the officer. I didn't look at Mark when I nodded. Angela thanked me with her eyes, not her mouth, and used her phone to scan. Technology doesn't blush. She verified their mailing address. She confirmed receipt of prior notices. She asked if either party had misrepresented occupancy status in the last certification. Mark stumbled. Karen used the word misunderstood. Angela wrote clarify and circled a date twice. The house listened. Even the fridge seemed careful. Lily finally spoke, voice thin, directed at Angela, not our parents. If I don't sign anything, she asked, does this touch me? Angela met her eyes. Only if you accept title or co-sign obligations, she said. You have no duty to adopt someone else's default. Lily nodded once, as if someone had handed her back a rib. Angela closed her folder. The sound felt like a lid. She placed a card on the table's state seal, name, phone, a future. She explained next steps, follow-up interview, document request, a hold notice to the bank regarding any title changes until their review was complete. She spoke in plain rhythm. This was not a raid. It was sunlight. Karen asked if this would be on record. Angela looked at the card, then at the room. It already is, she said. Maggie exhaled, long and quiet, like a wind choosing to pass through instead of knock something over. Aunt Carla sat down again without taking her eyes off Mark. The cousins found reasons to refill water and not wine. The kids in the other room paused their game and didn't resume. Angela turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Her gaze moved across faces without sticking. It caught on mine for a second, a small acknowledgement between two women who favored facts over theater. She didn't ask if I had called their office. I didn't volunteer anything. Not every truth needs a narrator. She stepped out into the coastal dark. Rain spoke soft against her blazer. The door closed. The house kept the new shape. Silence spread, dense and careful. Mark stared at the card like it might ignite. Karen reached for me with the old plea in her eyes, the one that used to work when I was 15 and tired. Lily's fingers found the edge of my chair. Maggie's small hand pressed steady into her shoulder again. What happens to a family story when the ending can't be staged? Mark finally swallowed and tried to turn the room back with one sentence. He didn't get the chance. Because when he lifted his eyes to me, expecting the old, reliable answer, I was already standing. I was already standing when my father finally looked at me. He expected the old script, a calm daughter smoothing edges. I gave him the new one. I told him I wouldn't carry his numbers, his timelines, or his silence. I told Karen I loved her but wouldn't help maintain a lie dressed as tradition. Lily reached for my sleeve and whispered, "Don't go." I squeezed her hand and said, "I'm here for you. Not for this." Mark said I'd embarrass them. Karen begged me to fix what I'd started. Maggie drew a breath that sounded like a closing door and said, "She didn't start it." The room held that line like a hymn. I picked up my bag. The binder felt lighter. Truth usually does after it lands. Outside, the wind tasted like salt and rain. I drove toward Seattle with the window cracked and the radio off. In the dark glass, my face looked tired and clean. Would you have turned back for peace, or kept driving toward a life that answers to you? The first letter from the commission arrived the next week. Formal words. Clear steps. A hold on title changes until review. I didn't forward it to anyone. They already knew. Family threads went quiet, then careful, then honest in places that surprised me. Aunt Carla stopped using her inside voice around Mark. She asked for numbers, not adjectives. The cousins texted Lily privately and asked what she needed, not what she could do. Jason sent Lily a message, clean break, no accusations. She deleted the photos, not the memories. It hurt her in the exact shape of the future she had planned. She started therapy on a Wednesday and called me after each session to sit in silence until words arrived. Sometimes we said nothing for 10 minutes. Silence can be medicine when it isn't hiding a wound. January wore the house down. A for sale sign went up in a front yard that had hosted 100 careful photos. The listing called it cozy and full of potential. The bank called it late. Strangers walked through rooms where we built blanket forts and apologized for the carpet. Offers came in. One stuck. I drove down the night before closing and took my childhood box from the hall closet, yearbooks, a ribbon from a science fair, 3 Polaroids that proved once we didn't pose so hard. I stood on the porch and watched the street breathe. The ocean was a low, steady drum. Karen peeked through the curtain and didn't open the door. Mark stepped outside and stood 6 feet away like we were both on thin ice. He searched my face for a bridge back to before. I didn't offer one. He said, "You made this impossible." I said, "No. This is what possible looks like when you tell the truth." They moved into a small apartment near the highway. 2nd floor. A view of parking lot and sky. No porch swing, no framed grid of holiday cards. Routine replaced spectacle. Mark learned the exact price of quiet. Karen learned how to cry without asking someone to mop it up. They stopped mailing glossy photos. They started returning calls slower and with fewer adjectives. Maggie sent me a note in her tidy librarian hand. "Truth is a kind of housekeeping," she wrote. "Hard at first. Easier every week." I taped it inside my pantry door, where I keep the things I reach for often. Lily and I met on Sundays. We walked along Alki when I was home, or FaceTimed with frozen noses when I wasn't. She told me about dreams that didn't involve keys. She talked about wanting a life that fit her hands, not a picture. We laughed more. We cried a little. She learned where her boundaries lived and how to guard them without apology. One evening she said, "I didn't lose a house. I lost a story that would have eaten me." I told her I was proud in the way you say it when you mean it all the way through. Spring made Seattle soft. Work steadied. I stopped rehearsing conversations in the shower. When my mother called, I answered if I had the bandwidth, not because I owed the day to someone else's fire. Once, Mark tried to angle the talk back to family loyalty. I told him loyalty without honesty is just leverage. He hung up. He didn't call back for a while. On the day the new owners moved into our old place, Lily texted me a photo from down the block, no caption, just a porch light turning on. We stayed on the phone for a few quiet minutes and listened to nothing together. It felt like the first breath after a held note. Here's what I know now. Keeping the peace is not peace if it demands your voice. Love isn't proven by how quietly you sink. A gift is not a gift if you can't afford to unwrap it. I was raised to crop myself out of pictures so the frame looked good. I don't do that anymore. I speak, even if my voice shakes. I hold the line, even when the room wants a softer story. I tell the truth, even when it breaks something that needed breaking. I didn't keep the house. I kept myself.